The military performance of the elephant is something heavily debated among military historians, with little conclusive results. Unlike in the west of the world, war elephants survive all the way to the 19th century on mainland Southeast Asia. Like in India, elephants were relatively more easily available in the region and were not as scarce and difficult to replace as they are in the Western world. On the campaign, the war elephant are the least numerous but the most dominant force, serving as ultra-shock cavalry, smashing and breaking through enemy lines, as only the most disciplined troops were able to stand against an elephant attack. The sight of these massive creatures stomping and charging with tusks bared and trumpeting as they advanced was something that would unnerve even the hardiest of men. Horses in particular, especially those alien to Southeast Asia, were vulnerable to facing elephants, so much that Southeast Asian kings frequently deployed them against foreign invaders. During the first Mongol invasion of Burma in 1277, the Burmese war elephants led the charge against the Fein Yuan cavalry, where the Mongol horses fled in the mere presence of the elephants during the opening battle. Similarly, in the Qing invasions of Burma 6 centuries later, the comb-bound war elephants regularly routed the Qing cavalry. Against other Southeast Asian armies, the quality of the elephant troops could be the main difference in battle. In general combat, army commanders often duel each other in the melee with their elephants. In the Ava-Hantawari War between Lower and Upper Burma, King Razadarit, the most famous Mon king, defeated Mingaun of Ava in a famous duel where he had sent Mingaun's elephant fleeing and disheartened the rest of the army at the Battle of Dayawadi in 1410. Elephants were less maneuverable than horse cavalry and were not really useful in chasing the enemy, but should their charge make contact, the impact was a tremendous one. In 1538, at the Battle of Mrauk-U, General Choten Anoyata, the future King Bayanao, led a small army from the Taungoo kingdom against a better equipped and more numerous Hantawari army, which included Indian and Portuguese mercenaries armed with firearms. However, they were poorly led. The Taungoo forces led an audacious charge with elephants at their head. Bayanao had led the attack on his elephant, Suelaman, where he broke through the enemy lines and attacked the enemy commander directly. Suelaman reportedly thrust his tusks into the opposing elephant and forced the Hantawari general to flee. Aside from its charge, the elephant also served as a mobile platform. With its superior height, riders on the howdah could rain down arrows, javelins, and musket fire on top of enemy positions. During the elephant's charge, the middle riders could provide covering fire. This was particularly useful in sieges where the elephant's height gave them some elevation. During the 4th Qing invasion of Burma, the Burmese used swivel guns and mortars on top of elephants to bombard the Qing defenders behind the fortress walls in the siege of Xuananmen. Yet, the elephants were not unstoppable. They were like living battering rams and were quite difficult to maneuver. Although a group of charging elephants was devastating upon contact, they were considerably vulnerable in a prolonged melee, where they could get surrounded and swarm from all sides. Furthermore, as mentioned before, elephants are sensitive creatures. Even the bravest and the most well-trained elephant has its limits. This is most clearly seen in the Battle of Dala in March 1415, where the Crown Prince of Ava, Mian Joswa, one of the finest soldiers of his day, met his end. The 24-year-old prince, on top of his elephant, Ngchikai, charged the Hantawari army but ended up too deep in the enemy lines and was surrounded. Ngchikai fought bravely, but upon being seriously wounded, he flung the prince off. The prince succumbed to his wounds and died shortly later. According to some Ming Chinese accounts, Burmese fitted their elephants with spikes on their sides to prevent enemy infantry from climbing on top. Furthermore, the elephant's legs were quite vulnerable to enemy swords and spears, and it is for this reason elephants are rarely deployed on their own. Elephant chargers were also vulnerable to ditches, earthworks, and stakes, which could considerably slow them down, enough for defenders to pick off their riders or concentrate their fire. But most importantly, due to their huge size and sensitivity, the elephants were most vulnerable to concentrated fire. while armor and its natural thick skin was enough to handle a certain degree of enemy projectiles, a concentrated barrage was generally enough to send the elephants running. During the Battle of Ngasaungjan in 1277, after the Burmese elephants had routed the Mongol cavalry, the Mongols rallied behind the tree line, where they dismounted and launched a heavy barrage of arrows into the elephants, who fled in pain and terror and end up even breaking their own cavalry and infantry forces. The Ming and Qing dynasties also used the same arrow and musket barrage strategy against Bamar and Shan war elephants. As these weapons became more prominent, the elephants became increasingly vulnerable on the battlefield. Furthermore, the development of other Burmese military branches were beginning to nullify the traditional strength of elephant forces. The Burmese infantry increasingly learned to dig ditches and earthworks quickly in the prospect of facing such enemies on short notice. By the 18th century, Bamar, Mon and Rakhine soldiers were noted by foreign observers as excellent military engineers. The Burmese cavalry too became quite adept at engaging enemy elephants. It is believed that the traditional tent pegging and javelin throwing contests of the Mingkintabin festival were originally anti-elephant drills. Burmese cavalrymen would hurl javelins at elephants and ride away. Or if they are forced to engage them, the horsemen would use their lances and strike the elephant's leg or toes. Still, the elephants were useful when used sparingly and in conjunction with other forces. During the Xuanyambin campaign, the Burmese used war elephants to throw the Qing bannerman cavalry in disorder, but it was done to herd them into an ambush by musketeers under French and British officers. When firearms became prominent, it pretty much ended the dominance of war elephants in pitched battles. Concentrated arrow fire, while effective, needed considerable preparation and logistics, and cannons may not always be available in such numbers to counter an elephant charge, but the wide availability of muskets allow armies to easily bring high levels of firepower anywhere on the battlefield. Elephant regiments were always expensive to maintain, and loss of elephants were particularly painful as their herds were culturally important for Burmese and other Southeast Asian monarchs. The last time the elephants were used in large numbers was at the Battle of Danube in the First Anglo-Burmese War in 1824. After beating back the first British assault with heavy losses, General Mahabandula attempted to break the British by attacking with elephants and cavalry. British musket and artillery easily broke the elephants because they could even get close enough, and the Burmese were beaten back. Elephants were still retained in the Compound military even after considerable modernization as mobile artillery, but otherwise remained only as mounts for commanders and ceremonial parades. The fall of the war elephant in some ways is comparable to the fall of the Burmese monarchies. Once mighty and proud, its glory only remains in memory. I hope you guys have been enjoying these videos so far. As you may imagine, getting these clips, sources and equipment for these videos can be quite expensive and time consuming. So if you want to support my work directly, click the link on the channel. It doesn't matter how much you want to donate because I'll still continue these work. One of my main objectives in this lifetime is to further promote and create content regarding the history of Myanmar and inspire others to study it, write novels, draw art set in those periods. And on that note, don't forget to press the subscribe button so I can gain the favor of YouTube's algorithm. See you around.